I've taken part in the Vim Jam 3 years in a row now, and it is always a lot of fun. They usually have a restriction and a theme, so you end up making a game with these two conflicting ideas in mind. So this time, the focus, apparently, was multi-use, and the theme was turn up the heat. And you know as well as I do that that means most of the games in the jam are going to have flamethrowers, so I wanted to avoid that. So with the help of a friend, we came up with the idea of a sci-fi game where you would use a trusty screwdriver to pry open doors, fix electrical panels, operate some kinds of machinery, fight alien spiders, and eventually turn on a generator to warm up the space, so you didn't freeze in your spaceship. So we created this plan, and I looked up some art packs, and I was all ready to go, and the next thing I knew, it was Friday. The next Friday. I don't know where those 7 days went, but they're gone. So I had 3 days to do a game that was already overscoped. So I did the only thing that I could do, which was drop the idea and try again. So now I'm doing a flamethrower game, but set in space with alien spiders. To get the ball moving, I brought over all of the art that I found into the game to create the space that you're fighting in. And then I took some of the art from my other game and just threw it in there. I picked the gun that looks the closest to what a flamethrower looks like, I think. And then I made a really quick little backpack and put them both into the game. And now I needed the flame. Since the plan for this was to make the flame expand and contract and do different things, I planned on blurring the image a little bit, so I wasn't too worried about how the flame looked. I had some troubles with rotation to get it to follow the actual gun, but once I got that working, I started working on the tweening of the flame so that it would expand outwards and then contract back in as you press the left mouse button. And then I added collision masks for the walls and Z-ordering for the player so that they can move around the space. And then for the flame, I added a little tiny shake so that it looks like the flame is breathing. So now, it was time for the enemies. I used Kenney's creature mixer, and then put the object into Sprite and combined them so I get something like short with legs. And it doesn't have 8 legs, but it kind of gives the feel of an alien spider. Then I put them into the game and made it so that the player can hurt them, and then grab this potion image that would be used as a loot drop when you killed so many enemies. And to satisfy the multi-use focus of the jam, I decided the fuel was going to be both your fuel for your flamethrower, your health, and the thing that you spend in the shop. So the loot drop has multiple uses. So I put that up on the UI bar and got the loop working where you would kill an enemy, they'd drop fuel, and then you could spend that fuel to refuel your flamethrower. And then next was the shop. I could have gone crazy with this with like crit chances and dodge chance and all that stuff, but I only had a couple days left. So the stats that you were going to spend points on were heat, range, armor, and speed. And those were enough to give a little bit of variety to the player, but not be too much for me to make. And for this I had to have an idea of the balancing. So how many points would it take for the flame to get just huge? Then I added the armor UI and set up the game over screen. And in my engine, leaderboards are stupidly easy to set up. So I couldn't not include a leaderboard and set it up so that your score is based on how many kills you get. And then I went back on itch and found these lovely assets. Links for all of these artists are in the description of this video and in the game. So I found this lovely art and put it into my game for the main menu. And I went to my favorite musician with light in their name, and after I put the music in the game, then I asked them if it was okay. And it was, so we're cool. And then the final touch for the game was going to be lighting. I've always used images and layering and fading and stuff like that to achieve lighting in my games. But for this one, I wanted to try the lighting system that's built into my engine. And I gotta say, I really like it. I put one light on the player, so even if you didn't have the flame going, you could still see. And I put one light in the center point of the flame. So as the flame got bigger, it would get bigger, but also it would follow the flame along. And at this point, I had a full game, which is awesome, because I still had a day left. So I sent that off to Playtesters and had a nap. And when I came back, I found out there was something terribly wrong with the balance of the game. Because enemies dropped fuel every so many enemies, the more of them that spawned in the game, which would happen over time as you kept fighting them, the more fuel would be dropped. So you could basically be immortal because you were getting hit less often than you were picking up fuel. And of course there were other problems too, like people not understanding that you could reload, because they thought the R was some kind of like name for the fuel and not a suggestion to press R, the button. And people were kind of frustrated that they couldn't see their kill count because the whole point of the game was to get kills. So I fixed all of those things and created a spawn animation, something really basic for the spiders so that they could spawn out of the ground instead of just spawning on top of you. That way you wouldn't get hurt immediately when they popped up, you'd have a chance to get away from them. Then it came time to name the game, and I don't think I should be allowed to do this anymore because, well, I looked up synonyms for flame, and conflagration was one of them, so I named the game Conflagrator. Yeah. I'm really not good at naming things. The names of a lot of my other games were picked with the help of the Fireside Discord. I'm just really bad at it. But anyhow, that's the name, Conflagrator. And then with about half a day left, I sent the game off for another round of playtesting, thinking that at this point it was kind of a balancing thing. And it really wasn't. It was more of a UI thing. People found that they were never buying armor or speed because they thought the armor was a one-time use thing and then it was gone. So you'd spend one bottle of fuel to buy one armor and then it would just be gone. So I added a backdrop to the armor UI so that when one went away, there was a darkened one there. So hopefully that would make you think that it regenerates. And people felt like your fuel went down way too slowly, and it felt like it was almost free. So they would just hold the button the entire game and not care about it. So I did turn that up a little bit to 25% more than what it was. But the biggest thing I did was add some particles onto the UI bar to show you when you're spending fuel, as more of a visual indicator that something's happening. Even though it's not dropping as fast as maybe it could, visually seeing something happen helped the players appreciate that their fuel was going down. And then the next thing was that people kept on finding that they'd play the game for a little while, and then at some point, they would go to the other side of the level and find all of the enemies bunched up in a ball. So they would walk over to the other side of the map, find this cluster of enemies, and then just immediately die. And this was because there's no actual pathfinding in the game. They're just literally making a straight line for you. So rather than fixing this by adding some pathfinding, I just made it so that the enemies spawned closer to you so they wouldn't spawn on the other side of the map and get stuck. And this had two benefits, because this meant that you shouldn't really be able to stay in place because you have things spawning underneath you at all times, and all of the action is happening where you are, making it more interesting for the player. And from there, all I had to do was marketing material, add the credits, and do some tweaking of variables. And then the game was done. I submitted it with like 10 hours left to go, and now the game is out, and you can go play it. A huge thank you to my patrons. Because of them, my coffee cup is full, and I can even afford creamer. As always, my links are down below, and if you decide to click on one, then I'll see you there.